Olum had now outsmarted King Anarchy twice. Each time, the king had been forced to reward the clever trickster, but his pride was deeply wounded. In his heart, the king could not bear the idea of a simple villager outshining him, the most powerful man in the kingdom. King Anarchy called his most trusted advisors to his side. "We must put an end to Olum's tricks once and for all," the king growled. "But this time, the challenge will be one that even his clever mind cannot solve." An advisor stepped forward and whispered into the king's ear, "Your Majesty, what if you give Olum a challenge that is not about wit, but about loyalty and sacrifice? Let us see if his cleverness can save him from his own heart." The king's eyes sparkled with dark intent. A week later, Olum received yet another summons to the palace. Word had spread that the king was planning something far more sinister this time. Many in the village urged Olum not to go, fearing for his safety, but Olum smiled and said, "I cannot refuse a challenge from the king, no matter how difficult it may be." As Olum entered the throne room, he could feel the tension in the air. The king's face was stern, his eyes filled with a strange, unsettling determination. "Olum," the king began, "I have one final task for you. Should you succeed, I will declare you the smartest man in the kingdom, and I will give you not only riches but my eternal respect. But should you fail, there will be no second chance." "Your Majesty," Olum said, bowing slightly, "I accept your challenge, whatever it may be." The king smiled, a smile without warmth. "This time, Olum, your task is not just a test of wit. You must solve a riddle, but one that comes with a choice. You have until sunrise tomorrow to decide." The king unfurled a scroll and read aloud, "Here is your riddle, Olum. There is a tree that stands at the edge of the kingdom, a tree whose roots touch the sky, and whose leaves brush the ground. In this tree lives an old man who knows the secret of life and death. Bring me this secret by sunrise, and you will have succeeded. But if you cannot, you must sacrifice something precious, something no amount of gold can buy." Olum knew that this riddle was not just a test of intelligence. The king had set a trap, one that required Olum to not only solve a mystery but make a great sacrifice if he failed. Without a word, Olum bowed and left the palace. He had until dawn to solve the riddle, but the price of failure was something far more serious than gold or land. Olum traveled through the night, searching for the tree at the edge of the kingdom. He asked travelers and wise men, but no one had ever seen such a tree. As the hours passed, Olum began to understand that this was not a riddle meant to be solved in the usual way. As he rested beneath a large tree, Olum realized that the answer to the riddle lay not in finding the tree, but in understanding the deeper meaning behind the king's words. "A tree whose roots touch the sky, and whose leaves brush the ground," Olum mused. "The king is speaking in metaphors. This tree is life itself." Olum smiled as the realization hit him. The secret of life and death. It is not something that can be taken or given. It is something we live with every day. With the riddle solved in his heart, Olum prepared to return to the palace, knowing that the true challenge was yet to come. Olum arrived at the palace just as the first light of dawn touched the sky. The king was waiting, surrounded by his advisors. "Have you brought me the secret of life and death, Olum?" the king asked, his voice dripping with anticipation. "Your Majesty," Olum replied, "the secret you seek is one we all know, but do not always understand. Life and death are two sides of the same coin. We cannot have one without the other, and so the secret is to live fully, without fear of the end." The king's eyes darkened. "That is not the answer I wanted, Olum," he said through clenched teeth. "You have failed the task, and now you must make the sacrifice I demanded. You must give up your freedom, Olum," the king declared. "You will live the rest of your days as my servant, bound to the palace. This is the price of your failure." The courtiers gasped, knowing that the king had gone too far. But Olum, ever calm, looked the king in the eye and said, "Your Majesty, I accept your terms, but I have one final request. Speak, the king said. Olum stepped forward and smiled. Let me serve as your advisor, for no man should make such decisions alone. Together, we will rule wisely, and I will use my wit not for tricks, but for the good of the kingdom. After a long pause, the king nodded. Very well, Olum, he said. You have proven yourself wise, not just clever. From this day forward, you will serve as my closest advisor. But remember, there will be no more tricks. And so, the clever trickster became the king's most trusted advisor. He no longer needed to outsmart others for fame or fortune, for he had earned something far more valuable: respect and wisdom. Olum had faced his greatest challenge yet, not a riddle or a puzzle, but the choice between pride and wisdom. And in the end, his cleverness led him to a life of true purpose. Thank you for joining us for the final adventure of Olum, the clever trickster. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales. And remember, wisdom is not just about solving problems, but about making the right choices. Until next time, may your paths be as clever as Olum's.